Ah, yes, the time that the US Navy got upset and destroyed half of Iran's entire naval fleet in a single 8-hour workday. Out and go get some ice cream. So in order to get all this done by quitting time, they're going to go ahead and establish 3 different surface attack groups. Each group is going to have 2 destroyers and 1 bonus ship.
Iran thought they saw an easy kill, a lone U.S. destroyer under minimal protection, 31 miles out. Their surveillance called it a low-risk, high-payoff target. They were wrong. In minutes, their mistake would cost them hundreds of millions in hardware, cripple their capabilities, and change the entire balance in the Gulf.
America then proceeds to assemble the largest naval convoy operation since World War II, send them into the Persian Gulf to protect Kuwaiti oil tankers.
What made this one of Iran's most expensive naval errors in recent history? And how did the U.S. take control so fast? Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How could a destroyer's calm morning watch turn into a scene of chaos in under 2 minutes? It was the kind of shift no one expected to remember. The air was cool and still, the low hum of the engine steady, and standard patrol patterns played out on the digital plots in the Combat Information Center. On the main deck, sailors moved through familiar routines, inspecting equipment, checking communications, monitoring radar sweeps that showed nothing out of the ordinary. A few crew members sipped coffee in the mess, chatting quietly about the day's scheduled drills. From the bridge, the Gulf's surface looked undisturbed, unbroken by any sign of hostile activity. But inside Iranian command posts on shore, operators leaned over their own screens, studying the silhouette and radar signature they believed was a solitary, lightly defended U.S. destroyer. The picture their surveillance feed sent back supported the conclusion: a warship without nearby escorts, holding a steady speed and course. Confidence in a quick strike was high, reinforced by the assumption that no significant reinforcements could arrive in time. At their order, 2 Shahed 238 drones were pushed along a low-altitude path, staying under most long-range detection profiles. At the same time, a RAID 500 anti-ship missile was lined up for a supersonic run. Its approach trajectory was selected to halve the reaction time for the target's defenses. The drones moved first, small cross-sections flickering on distant radar as mere blips before disappearing again in sea clutter.
The USS Samuel B. Roberts took on half of its weight in water in the first minute. This is a catastrophic amount of damage that would sink 99% of ships.
Less than a minute later, the missile's radar homing system locked in, closing distance at over 2,000 kilometers per hour. The first detonation ripped across the destroyer's starboard side, throwing fragments through metal plating and rupturing a fuel conduit. Almost instantly, a second blast followed. This from a drone, slamming into the aft structure, igniting more fuel and debris. Black smoke poured upward in thick columns, visible far enough away that nearby commercial vessels began radioing their watch stations to report what looked like a major naval incident.
1 second, everything's fine. The next second, there's a 15-foot wide hole in the bottom of your ship. Everything's on fire and water is rushing in.
Routine tasks were instantly abandoned. Sailors scrambled to damage control stations, securing hatches and grabbing breathing gear. Automated fire suppression kicked in, but was overwhelmed in some compartments where shrapnel had disabled the systems. Lighting flickered as auxiliary power units tried to stabilize the grid. Sound-powered phone circuits filled with urgent reports. Man down in engineering, injuries in the galley, systems offline in the fire control center.
Ah, yes, the time that the US Navy got upset and destroyed half of Iran's entire naval fleet in a single 8-hour workday.
5 sailors were killed in the initial blasts. 19 more were injured, several critically, and medical teams were already working in cramped, smoke-filled spaces to keep them alive. The Iranian strike planners couldn't see any of this in real time. They had no live assessment from the scene, relying instead on assumptions from pre-strike intel. From their perspective, the hit confirmed the vulnerability they expected.
The entire crew fights their ass off and somehow manages to get the situation under control and limp the ship all the way back to Dubai where they can get it to a port.
What they didn't track were the encrypted transmissions firing off from the wounded destroyer to assets that weren't visible on their screens. Over the horizon, concealed from Iranian detection, a carrier strike group was already in position. Its presence hadn't figured into Iran's target profile, an absence in their planning that would prove pivotal. The moment those emergency signals were received, strategic control shifted entirely. In less than the time it had taken for the missile to cross the final stretch to its target, orders were moving through multiple command layers, synchronizing air sorties, surface maneuvers, and electronic warfare assets.
Out and go get some ice cream. So in order to get all this done by quitting time, they're going to go ahead and establish 3 different surface attack groups. Each group is going to have 2 destroyers and 1 bonus ship.
The attack on the destroyer had been designed to cripple a single ship. Instead, it had activated a much larger machine, one about to respond with scale and coordination far beyond anything Iran had prepared for. How do you go from defense to a wipeout in less than half an hour? Rear Admiral Keller didn't raise his voice. In the flag plot aboard the carrier, his staff moved through checklists with the precision of a drill. But this was no drill. Orders moved in parallel, each one triggering separate but synchronized operations across sea and air.
2 modern naval vessels, that's the Iranian frigate Sahand and the Iranian frigate Sabatland. They're going to go ahead and take out at least one of those.
Fleet communications routed targeting data directly to ready squadrons. Air defense shifts on board the carrier finished their rotations as the first strike packages were cleared for launch. On the flight deck, F-35s were already rolling toward the catapults. Jet blast deflectors rose, engines screamed at full military power, and launch officers signaled them forward. Within seconds of each other, several lifted into the humid air, banking toward Iranian radar signatures. A few decks below, maintenance crews readied UH-60 helicopters configured for fast insertion. Marine rifle squads were moving to the hangar bay, checking weapons and gear for boarding actions or recovery missions. At the same time, a forward air base brought its A-10 Thunderbolt IIs online.
The oil rig finally radios back and is like, yeah, please cease fire, we're gonna leave. So all the Iranian military members leave.
These were not carrier aircraft, but land-based assets ordered into the fight, selected specifically for their ability to shred surface combatants at close range. The A-10's GAU-8A Avenger is a 7-barrel rotary cannon built into the nose of the aircraft. Firing nearly 4,000 depleted uranium rounds per minute, it can walk a solid line of ordnance across a target and peel through armored plating almost instantly. Against a warship the size of an Iranian corvette, a sustained burst would take away sensors, guns, and propulsion in seconds. Midway through the response timeline, one of those corvettes tried to reposition itself away from the radar picture. It didn't get far.
Of the ship. The keel is this bottom part right here. It supports and stabilizes the structure of the entire ship, and it gets blown completely in half.
First came the suppression. An F-35C dropped precision ordnance to disable its forward gun mount and communications mast. Moments later, an A-10 rolled in low, cannon chewing through its superstructure.
Another radio message, hey, time's up. They then fire the 5-inch guns right over the top of the oil rig with the rounds set to airburst.
The ship erupted in flames before its crew could complete abandoned ship signals, the blast sending a column of black smoke high enough to be tracked on weather satellites. Even as that target sank, Operation Judgment Spear was shifting rapidly inland. The destroyer's attackers had launched from hardened sites a short drive from the coast. Reaper drones moved in from high altitude, scanning for active launchers and command shelters. Switchblade loitering munitions were guided onto smaller mobile radar units, each strike collapsing a piece of the air defense picture. Minutes behind them, F-15ES delivered bunker buster payloads against the primary command building, breaking it apart in a flash that briefly lit the desert floor. The strikes were timed and spaced to avoid collateral damage.
And the most incredible part of all of it, not a single American was killed, only 10 men were injured during the fire and the initial explosion.
Surveillance confirmed the absence of civilian presence in every engagement zone before weapons release. By the time the final secondary explosions faded, not a single civilian casualty had been recorded. From the first launch authorization to the moment Iranian command communications went silent, the span was measured in minutes. In that time, Iran's immediate naval defense network in the area ceased to function. 4 mobile missile batteries and 3 patrol craft were gone. The corvette lay in pieces on the seabed. The tally in destroyed hardware climbed past $300 million, but the more important figure was 0. The number of Iranian naval assets left in the vicinity capable of striking back. The tempo now belonged entirely to the U.S. carrier group. Air patrols fanned out, surface combatants repositioned to cut off reinforcements, and electronic warfare units targeted what little remained of Iranian coastal radar. What began as an Iranian attempt to isolate and cripple a single ship had been inverted completely. The Navy was no longer absorbing the attack. It was dictating the next phase. And the follow-up strikes were already underway. Iran's perception of a quick, low-risk strike set the stage for its own undoing. The destroyer they targeted was never alone. It was one node in a larger web designed to respond faster than an opponent can adapt. Modern naval power works through integration. Ships, aircraft, and surveillance assets acting in unison, sharing the same tactical picture and executing coordinated strikes within minutes. In the Gulf, quiet seas can hide immense force. The silence that followed wasn't luck or hesitation.
They're literally cinching the hull together with steel cables trying to stabilize it because the only thing holding it together is a deck at this point.
It was the result of deliberate action, executed precisely, leaving no doubt about who now dictated the balance of power in those waters.